We're live, Wendy.
These people are streaming into the room, so we'll just give it a few minutes. Let folks get in, get settled. If you're just joining us, we're going to get started in just a few seconds, giving everyone a chance to get in the room, get settled, get ready for what's going to be a great conversation. I guess if there's one good thing about Zoom conferences is that if you come in the room a little late, you don't have to kind of look for the empty seat and ask people to scoot down. Try to get a seat where you can see the speaker. You'll be able to see all of us. All right, well, looks like we've got a good group here, so we'll go ahead and get started. I want to thank you all for joining us for this very important discussion, which we've entitled, Memphis Needs More Black Graduates. My name is Wendy T. Thomas. I am the founder of MLK 50, Justice Through Journalism, and we're the co-sponsor of today's event, along with the Community Foundation of Greater Memphis. I'm also going to be your moderator for tonight's discussion with our esteemed panelists. These are some of my favorite people in Memphis. First, we have Beverly Robertson, who is the Executive Director of the Greater Memphis Chamber. We also have with us Dr. Carol Johnson-Dean, who is Interim President at LeMoyne-Owen College. And we also have Bob Bachler, who is the head of the Community Foundation of Greater Memphis. Now, the Community Foundation took a historic step recently by establishing a $40 million endowment fund to benefit LeMoyne-Owen College. So by your attendance here, audience, at this conversation, you've taken an important first step in expanding this conversation about Black graduates and engaging in what promises to be an important and at times difficult conversation. So throughout this evening, for the next 90 minutes, we want you to participate. You'll be given some opportunities to interact with us and also to put any comments and questions that you may have in the chat box. So we'll be reminding you throughout this to go ahead and do that. And we'll try to address as many of those as possible as we go throughout. So we're going to start by looking at the opportunity here. And we'll go to a video. Those are some sobering statistics, but as Dr. Martin Luther King said, the prescription for the cure rests with the accurate diagnosis of the disease. The median household income for Black families in Memphis is half that of whites, and that of course is largely due to college attainment rates. Now, as the video said, college is a route to prosperity, but it isn't the only one, right? So we want to make that clear. You can have an economically stable life for you and your families without a college degree, but having that degree does make it, does improve the odds. Dr. Johnson-Dean, my first question would be to you. You've been interim president of LeMoyne-Owen for a little while now, and you followed a long and storied and successful career as a school superintendent, both with Memphis City Schools and Boston Public Schools. So when you hear those numbers in that segment we just watched, what are some of your thoughts? What do you think?
Well, Wendy, immediately I think about really in 2005 when I served as superintendent of Memphis City Schools. We had a major campaign called Every Child, Every Day College Bound. And it was probably very misunderstood. People questioned whether we should be saying that every child should go to college. And I think what we were trying to communicate was this. We believe that every teacher should teach every student as if they thought they would have the choice of going to college. And so we wanted to set an expectation, particularly for students who might be first generation college goers. No one in their family had ever even thought about college. And we wanted to set that expectation. And then in 2015, Governor Haslam created Drive to 55 because I think he believed that an educated workforce was definitely the engine to drive the economy. And at that time, the college rate was about 37%. And he wanted by 2025 to be able to say that 55% of Tennessee's residents would be college educated. So when I see those statistics, I am reminded that we have a lot more work to do, that we have a lot more work to do around the equity issues for particularly African-American families and students in this country. And the Atlantic magazine had an article recently that said 99% of all jobs created since 2008 went to workers with at least some college or some certification. So in order for us to make sure that we have communities that are viable, families that can take care of themselves and have the economic engine of this community be strong, we have to educate African-American students, and particularly here in Memphis.
All right. Beverly, now you've been executive director at the Chamber now since 2019. And in that time, you've made no secret of your commitment to building the Black middle class and Black wealth in this community. So the title of this discussion is Memphis Needs More Black College Graduates. And so my question to you would be, why? Why do we need more Black college graduates?
Thank you for giving me that question, because I think what I'm going to say, a lot of people may not be aware of, but let me just say in general, we need more college graduates, Black college graduates, and let me be clear, because they are smart, they're resourceful, they're relationship builders, and because of our struggles, individually and collectively, they understand how to adapt, adjust, and overcome. And in the business world, I'm going to tell you, you've got to be able to adapt, adjust, and overcome. They are tech savvy. They understand this digital environment in which we operate. They are able to take advantage of jobs in robotics and artificial intelligence because they were reared on that. And as I started looking over the landscape of HBCU graduates, I learned some things about HBCU graduates. 13% of HBC graduates are CEOs, 40% are engineers, 40% are professors at non-HBCU colleges. So I'm saying we have the intellectual capacity, if given the opportunity, we can go as far as our minds will allow us to be challenged to go. And I think we have in this community and in others too, we have allowed this class of Black talented people to be more on the sidelines and not get in the game. They haven't had an opportunity to get in the game. And what we're trying to do at the Chamber is to upskill them so that there will be no excuse as we attract higher levels of investors into the marketplace that will pay higher wages. What we've got to do is build a talent pipeline. And that means relationships with presidents of higher education. That means that we've got to forge conversations with our Shelby County School Superintendent so that they understand the businesses that we're attracting and the skills that are necessary for young people to have, and even bake that into the curricular of the school system. So those are just some of the reasons. We've got it's more than a talented 10th, Wendy. I mean, back in the day, it was a talented 10th. We've got more than a talented 10 out here. We just need to capitalize on them.
So I guess then my follow-up question for that, so that would be, so you see more Black college graduations helping the city's economic growth and
I do.
taking us to the next
Directly
level.
helping the economic growth of this city, and in so many different ways. As entrepreneurs, you know, as people who work in nonprofit organizations, because there's getting ready to be a revolution in nonprofits. A lot of the people who've been in those spaces for a long time are going to be moving on through the cycle. So we need for them to be a part of that. Look, even in leadership and in government and elected offices, we need for young people to be thought leaders in that, in technology. I mean, in every virtual space that I can think of. And the beauty is that when the Federal Reserve Bank did a report before our Chairman Circle group, one of the things the researchers said is that we may have an out-migration of older people who may be moving other places, but we've got a substantial in-migration of young urban intellectuals, many of them African Americans, moving into Memphis, and actually many of them are just diverse across the range, moving into Memphis, looking at Memphis as an opportunity for growth. So it is definitely that they can impact our economic future in the marketplace.
Right. So Bob, my question is to you then, as head of the Community Foundation here in Greater Memphis. What does having more Black college graduates mean from where you sit?
Well, I'm going to harp on a couple of the same points, but I'm going to add another one as well. I mean, the Community Foundation was created to improve this community, strengthen this community through philanthropy and philanthropic efforts. That means we're trying to make this a better community. I think that having more Black college graduates certainly creates better opportunities for all of our neighbors, including the ones who have been most underserved throughout our history, our Black community. And then the numbers couldn't be any clearer. And then secondly, you know, that creates a stronger, more attractive workforce for the people that are already have businesses here, that the businesses we're trying to attract here. It just improves all of those numbers. But and starts to level the playing field as the video talked about. But I think that there's something that the broader community isn't talking about enough. I know parts of the community are talking about equity and creating a just community, but the broader community needs to be talking about that more. I think that I moved to Memphis in the 70s, and in the 70s and 80s, I think that we sort of viewed Memphis as being a zero-sum game, that if some portion was getting improved, that it was costing somebody something else. And I think that couldn't be farther from the truth. Educating all of our students, particularly the Black majority that is here, improves business for everybody, improves opportunity for the community, improves the quality of life throughout our community. It touches on so many other things that we don't even talk about. It is the easiest thing we can do to improve the quality of our economy and the attractiveness of our community.
Great. Well, I want to stop now and ask our guests what they think. So we're back, and we have a question for you. It's there on your screen. We want you to answer. The question is, and I'll read it, what level of impact will increasing the number of Black college graduates have on our overall economy? What level of impact will increasing the number of Black college graduates have on our overall economy? So if you can just click on your response there and hit submit, and we'll let those answers come in. I want to remind you that you can also participate in the comments and in the chat box with your comments and questions. You'll see a little icon down there that says Q&A. definitely want you to participate those. I participate there. I've been reading some of those and trying to Google some answers. I am a journalist, so I have to do a little research. I'm always game for that. Getting some responses in. Hopefully everybody's answered that question. Wow, so it seems like we have a almost unified response there. So 89% of you said that increasing number of Black college graduates would have a very significant impact, and nobody said no impact at all. We've got 177 people on this call. Hopefully, everyone 178. If everyone got a chance to respond to that. So we'll have some live discussion now with our panelists. One of the questions that came up in the chat was from Terry Freeman. And if this is the Terry Freeman I'm thinking it is, it's probably the executive director of the National Civil Rights Museum. And she asks, because we've moved into an era where it is not popular to say that students should go to college. It is more popular to say that college isn't for everyone. I think this is going to be a question for Dr. Johnson Dean. While I agree that I think every child, well, I agree with that. I think that every child should be prepared to go to college. Any thoughts?
So let me say that I think that, again, we should educate students so that they have choices, first and foremost. And I think there are lots of choices out there. Some of them have to do with 2-year certification programs. Some of them have to do with the military and military training. And some of them have to do with going to a traditional 4-year college. But I think we want to prepare all students equally. And we don't want to prepare some students to go to college and other students not to even attain college. And what we know from the research is that it only takes one generation for everybody in that family to realize that they can go to college and they can be successful. When you look at 97% of the residents who go to college don't live below the poverty level or live above the poverty level, there is an economic issue. Having said that, my brother-in-law went to the military. He's an aviation mechanic today for FedEx, and he got a great skill. We have a partnership with Tech 901 where we have students learning A+ Cisco certifications, so that I believe every student has to have some skill, some training, some post-secondary background that propels them to employment and career opportunities. College education has already demonstrated that it provides a great economic base, but it's not the only answer to making sure that the economy of Memphis improves.
Right. So when we say college, we don't necessarily mean what maybe we traditionally think of, residential college, going there right out of high school, being on campus for 4 years and graduating with a bachelor's degree. Would that be accurate?
Yes, and we have at LeMoyne-Owen College a program called the Accelerated Studies for Adult Professionals. And it's older adults who decide later in life, they already have a job, but they want to get more skills or they want to get a credential. And they may take evening or weekend programs so that they can move up in the world without necessarily being 18 to 24-year-olds. So I think that we have to create educational opportunities, certification programs, and open up doors so that people in our community can be a part of the economic engine of the community.
Great, great. So let's talk about the title of this, because I did get some questions when we were promoting this online. Memphis needs Black college graduates. Do we mean graduates, Black people who are graduates of HBCUs, or do we mean Black people who have graduated from a college, or maybe just people who have graduated from HBCUs? How are we thinking about that distinction? Bob, Beverly?
Well, I'll jump in. We need all Black college graduates from wherever we can get them from. And I think part of the reason we're obviously focusing on LeMoyne-Owen is because of the endowment that the Community Foundation created. And I'll come back to that and say that we care about Black college graduates from wherever we can get them. The U of M does a great job, as do the other local colleges and universities. And we have a lot of students from Memphis that go somewhere else, but then come back and benefit us. But there is something that's unique about HBCUs too. They tend, and Dr. Johnson-Dean is better talking about this than I am, but they reach students that in a lot of cases wouldn't be going to those other places. They're a lot of times first-time college students, first-generation college students, people that are just more comfortable in an HBCU environment. So yes, all Black college graduates, but HBCUs offer a particular opportunity, and one that we've not fully appreciated in Memphis by lifting up LeMoyne-Owen.
All right. Let me go to a question that we have coming into our Q&A box. This is from an anonymous attendee who asked, what is the city or foundations doing to support and not penalize young adults who leave for college and come back home to Memphis? Personal experience has shown there is little to no support or acknowledgement. So what are we doing to support people from Memphis who leave for college, maybe go somewhere else, and then come back home and are looking for employment? I think that's what, Beverly, I don't know if that's something that you can speak to. You need to unmute yourself, Beverly.
I'll take a stab at it. I think there are a number of organizations that work to assimilate those who are both new to Memphis, as well as those who come back into the Memphis marketplace. I think a number of organizations, New Memphis Institute has programs that really reorient people to the marketplace, get them deeply engaged with their colleagues who may be out of town, those who may be from in town, so that they share some commonalities and can really relate to each other. But more importantly, they actually are engaged in projects in Memphis. And those may not have been projects that existed when they lived in Memphis before, because they're back. I've had some experiences where young people who have left Memphis, gone out of town, and come back to Memphis 20 years later and find the city vastly different. And from a positive perspective, not a negative perspective, versus when they went. So there are some programs, but I would hasten to say not enough. And we probably need more to make young people who are returning home feel a lot more comfortable in this new city that we call Memphis, or new to them anyway.
Right, right. Okay, well, we're going to go to our next video segment. We're going to hear from some Memphis area high school and college students about what they see as the challenge to getting into and staying into college.
What makes it difficult for an African American student from Memphis to get to college? I feel like the main problem would have to be opportunities, lack of opportunities, most definitely, and lack of support, really.
Our age group tends to get sucked up into the wrong crowds, and they get led down the wrong path and get into various activities that messes up their chances of being able to go to college and even having a better life for themselves. Also, what I think is another reason behind that is they have to stay back, get jobs, pay bills, take care of their family, take care of their brothers, their sisters, their moms, their grandmas, and they can't even worry about their own life.
I feel that the reason that Black youth does not go to college is because of funding. Most of us don't have that kind of money laying around, and I feel like we are not properly educated on all the different ways that could go about paying for colleges.
Speaking from experience, applying for college is no easy thing. If you don't have a strong backbone and foundation and support system, then that process is even harder.
Create scholarships for students who, have that 4.0 GPA, but also have that 2.5 GPA, because not everyone can make all A's.
Some people may not have people to look up to as far as role models, so they don't know that college it's okay to go to college. You don't have to stay in the streets or just find ways to get money. You can use your education to get you money, and some people don't know that because they don't have the proper role models,
So that is why even when Memphis students get to college, we struggle because of misguided sets of values that forced us to neglect our true interests, and even more unfortunate, some drop out and never finish college.
A problem I faced as a black male from Memphis, Tennessee, going to a PWI is just being used to being the only person of color in many of my classes. It's a challenge I knew I was going to face heading into college, but it is one that has taken time to get used to.
Also, things happen in family, and like, kids want to come back home, stay close to their parents, and it's like life changing events that can happen that can really like cause a person to not want to stay in college.
So I feel like if we just educate the youth more on how we could solve these issues, then more of us will stay in college.
That's great to hear from young people about what they see as the challenges of getting into and staying in colleges, and can definitely identify with some of those tensions they're feeling between family and their future and that sort of thing. So Bob, I want to hear a little bit more from you about why the foundation decided to make this investment in LeMoyne-Owen. Tell me about that.
Yeah, and bear with me a little bit because it's a little bit of the history of Memphis, because the Community Foundation was actually founded in 1969, believe it or not, as a direct response to the sanitation strike in 1968. Business and community leaders got together and said, we did a great job of tearing the city down, and during the sanitation strike, creating a lot of divisions. What do we do to fix it? And what they decided to do in talking to leaders from other cities was try to drive charitable giving. So that's the purpose of a community foundation, is to serve people and help them facilitate and empower their charitable giving. So we were founded in 1969 to grow philanthropy in Memphis. Now, not surprisingly, that history throughout the 70s was working with families of privilege and of wealth, which was largely white families. So most of what we did for the first 20 years of our existence was help those families manage their own charitable giving. In the 90s, we started to say we've got a bigger responsibility for the city as a whole. So we started to try to raise dollars to invest in the community in ways that other philanthropy wasn't, through what we called the Community Partnership Fund. We've been investing in Memphis for about the last 25 years, but only about $1 million a year, which over time, as we know, $1 million doesn't go very far on the streets of Memphis. So our board in 2018, after having been at this for a while, said we need to change this. We need to create a broader asset base to really grow our ability to invest in the things where Memphis needs it the most. So they vowed to create a new and grow a new endowment that will permanently fund our charitable giving and our community investment, community-based investment, because not much of our charitable giving in Memphis is it's either individuals or it's big foundations that invest where they want to go, and there's not a lot of community voice in those things. So actually, as we started on that path about a year ago, this time last year, we went out into a series of community interviews to say, what does the community want a community foundation to be? So we developed, I'm only going to touch on one piece of it. We developed what we call community investment principles, because we wanted to be able to tell the community, the nonprofit community, and people we were trying to raise dollars from about what we were trying to do. And I think that the vision that we came up with is pretty staggering for where we have been. But our vision for the Mid-South, which our board actually ratified in April as the COVID pandemic was starting to wave over us, the vision says we will create a just and equitable region where all individuals and groups receive the resources and opportunities they need to reach their full potential, and where identity and geography do not determine their outcomes. We will build a community where everyone is welcome, valued, resourced, and informed, one where people can easily access opportunities to contribute and to thrive. And those are not idle words. Those are words that we expect to put out on the streets as we grow that. So as we were getting ready to roll out this new endowment in the spring, we decided that in the middle of a COVID pandemic probably wasn't the best time to raise a bunch of money. So we took a half a step back, but then as the George Floyd murder happened and all the other social upheavals that were going on, and then so that was the kind of the head scratcher moment, but the real spark of it was Reed Hastings, the Netflix CEO, making significant gifts to Spelman, Morehouse, and the United Negro College Fund. UNCF, $40 million each. We realized that we had accumulated assets that we could do the same thing. And we're like, we're as good as any of those people. We have historically Black college that has been underinvested for too long, and we had invested in it 10 and 15 years ago when it was really, really struggling. The Community Foundation, they put some of our limited dollars into LeMoyne-Owen. So we knew LeMoyne-Owen. I've worked with Dr. Johnson Dean for a number of years, known her for quite a while. We said, we can do this. We don't need to wait and let other people do things better than Memphis does. So in a fairly short time, we took it to our board, and our board said, we have restricted assets that we can put to this purpose. And we did it. And we did it on a fairly short time frame, and we did it against the backdrop of all the social issues that were going on in June and July. So that's kind of where it came from, but it shows kind of the evolution of where we came from and where we're going.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, that's quite a story. I'm sure it had to be that's welcome news for you, Dr. Johnson Dean, as interim.
Absolutely. And I think I've said over and over again how overjoyed we are, because it allows the college to invest in academic programs, to give scholarships, and to really do a better job of recruiting our students. Let me say a little bit about our students, because after listening to these students on your video clip, it's heartwarming, heart-touching, and inspirational, but it speaks volumes about the need that exists out there. Over 92% of the students who attend LeMoyne-Owen College, the only historically Black college in Memphis, are eligible for some kind of federal or state financial aid for them to go to college. And many of them are first-generation college goers. They're the first person in their family to ever navigate college. And as you heard from the students, navigating college is no small task, especially if you don't have a family system at home that has that tradition. And I'm reminded of the former governor of Massachusetts. He used to say it only takes a single generation. If you can get one student in that family to graduate from college and go on, it changes the trajectory and the belief and the culture in that family that it can happen. And it can happen in our poor families in 38126 or 38106 where we are. And it can just make such a huge difference. I think this investment speaks volumes to our students and to our communities that LeMoyne-Owen College is worth investing in, that our African-American students are worth investing in. There are about 104 historically Black colleges across the United States, but when you look at, and really we only educate maybe 5% of the total college population as a group of colleges, but if you look at the graduates, you can see that 80% of the Black judges, 50% of the Black lawyers, 25% of the undergraduates in STEM fields. And the National Science Foundation did a study not too long ago where they looked at the top schools producing PhDs in STEM fields. And the top 10 schools were all historically Black colleges. I think what we do best is we take students who otherwise would not have opportunity. We provide them the support, the wraparound services, the ways and the coaching they need to navigate the experience and the exposures that Beverly talked about, so that they can be successful in spite of their family background or their family circumstance.
All right, that's powerful. That's powerful. So Beverly, this isn't an issue, the shortage of Black college graduates that happened overnight. So talk to me about, Dr. Johnson Dean just mentioned a generation, changing something in a generation. Talk to me about your timeline and how you see this gift from the Community Foundation helping LeMoyne-Owen and the city in terms of over time.
Well, as Dr. Carol Johnson Dean said, if we can get one person in a family that has never really experienced going to college to go through and then continue on into the workforce so that they are actually serving as the example for the rest of the family members, and not just for the family members, the community in which they live, the church in which they attend. I mean, that to me begins the ball rolling in the right direction. And I think Dr. Johnson Dean is correct in that these students need so much more than your typical student that attends college. They need the assurance, number one, that they can do it. They also need the wraparound services that colleges are often stretched to provide, but HBCUs do it somehow. I don't know how, but they manage to do it. And hopefully they have engaged their alumni groups to be able to help them serve as ways in which they can secure wraparound services for some of these students, because some of these students have the weight of the world on their shoulders, trust me. They come from home environments where the home needs them to go out and work and to pay in order to pay the light bill. Some of them come from situations where they may have had to live in their cars for a period of time, but have just decided that they are going to do better. So I think that it's going to take a while, Wendy, for us to really see a big enough audience so that we begin to see a difference, but you got to start somewhere. Right. And unfortunately, we haven't started in the ways that we've needed to before, but we now have the resources, thank God, for the Community Foundation. And let me thank you personally. I have been hanging with LeMoyne for a long time. I mean, I would say for about 20 years. I've been working with them and talking to them and trying to provide the resources that Trust has available to be able to offer. And so I think that if each one of us would take it upon ourselves to just mentor, to just adopt. My husband and I have adopted.
We're gonna get to some of the solutions and things we can do.
Okay. Okay.
So let's wrap on that.
I'm going to hold that and say thank you, Bob, and thank you, Dr. Johnson, for accepting the role that you're sitting in at LeMoyne-Owen College. We wish that you would be there for a longer amount of time, but we do know that what you're doing now is going to make a difference in the very near future in the lives of so many young people.
So we're going to pivot now and check in with our audience and let's see what they think. We're back. We can have a question on the screen shortly. Here we go. So there's another question. We again want you to do what you did before. So answer here. The question is, what do you believe we need most to help Black students get to and stay in college? There's some options here. More mentorship programs, more scholarship programs, more internship programs, or none of the above. So let's pick. Give everyone there a minute to respond. I picked more mentorship programs. I don't know. I'll be curious to see what others selected. Okay. More mentorship programs, even more than internships, which I guess give you some more experience and maybe what you're going to choose, and more than scholarship programs, which money is often a barrier to getting into and staying in college. Dr. Johnson, I wanted to start with a question for you. Who is the LeMoyne-Owen College student?
So that's such a great question. And I think I already stated that about 92% of our students are eligible for some kind of federal or student aid in order to attend college. Our population is about 65% women and about 35% men, and it's about 98% African American. We do have about 2% of our students who are international. And most of our students actually do come from Memphis or the Mid-South, Northern Mississippi, Eastern Arkansas, and then some other adjoining states, St. Louis, Chicago, as far away as California and Delaware, but mostly there are students who actually are going to probably stay in Memphis. And so that's all the more reason to make sure that they are well educated. I think the other thing that I would focus on is many of them are first generation in their family to go to college. Many of them come from our local high schools right here in Memphis. And I might add that given that, and given the fact that students in Memphis have lost some instructional time due to the pandemic, and those are the same students we're going to have to help get through high school and college, we have even more work to do because of the pandemic, and particularly our high school students losing some instructional time. One thing that we learned, though, through this pandemic is this: so many of our students had no technology access other than their cell phone. They didn't have a computer at home. They didn't have broadband access. And so we not only had to put computers in the hands of our students, thanks to the city and the county for being very supportive and our alumni, but we were also having to make sure that they had hotspots and support them so that they could stay engaged in school. The other thing I think that I learned, and Beverly talked a little bit about this, some of our students were really part of the family income structure. So they had part-time jobs to finish college. And so because they were, and some people lost their jobs, their families weren't employed during the pandemic, they suffered more dramatically than other families might have. And so I think that when we think about what we have to do, we have to be prepared. One thing that I learned is a lot of our students used, for example, either our library on campus or the Benjamin Hooks Library, which of course, Benjamin Hooks is an LLC graduate, I have to throw that in, but that's where they went. When the libraries closed and the college campus closed, these students were at a significant disadvantage to do the research projects and do other things that would engage them in learning because they didn't have like lots of books and other resources at home. So I think that our students need that added support. They need the help. And then even some of our younger moms who were also students had students who were not in school. And so they were trying to navigate staying in college, having babysitting problems now, and really having economic challenges. So I think our student population looks different. And I'll just give you one example. 92% of our students are eligible, as I said, for some kind of federal student loan. That compares to 73% of all of the HBCUs. So our students are poorer than the traditional historically Black colleges. But when you take out all the HBCUs and you just look at students who are eligible for financial aid, that number for everybody else is 38%. So you can see that we are disproportionately represented by students whose families live below the poverty level, which is below $30,000 for a family of four.
You're muted, Wendy.
That's really striking, and thank you for amplifying some of those issues that your students were facing during the pandemic. I think the pandemic has really laid bare a lot of the holes in our social safety net, and I would universal childcare would maybe have helped in some of those more relief from a stalled Congress that could not get things together. So yeah, that's really stark. And even thinking about students being a part of the family income, I think that's something maybe that we forget. We may think of college students having jobs to pay for shoes or clothes, but maybe not necessarily for the family's living expenses, rent or mortgage or that sort of thing. So thank you for amplifying that. We had a question in the chat that asked, what is LeMoyne-Owen doing to increase student enrollment? Can you talk about that, Dr. Johnson-Dean?
Yeah, so we have a lot more work to do. I think part of it is making sure students are aware that LeMoyne exists, making sure that we also I have to say that the Community Foundation had a powerful vision, but they acted on that vision with this donation, and it's going to make a huge difference in our ability to offer scholarships to families who really can't afford to go to college. And college is not just about getting the Pell Grant and paying tuition. There are lots of expenses that are associated with going to college, with participating. I think that we're trying to also reach out to our alums a lot. And as you know, I know lots of college, high school counselors and principals. So we're reaching out, and not just into our traditional schools, but also with our charter schools here in Memphis. And I will say that our students learn a lot about college through social media now, much more than just going to a college fair. And so we have to think of different ways of engaging them. The other avenue that I think we're trying to reach out more to is to try to get transfer students from Southwest. We know that a lot of our students are in 2-year programs, and they could be in 4-year programs. So they have a good 2-year experience. We want to make sure that we grab those 2-year experience students and get them enrolled in our college as a 4-year, so they finish a 4-year degree. I think the other thing that we have to do a better job of is partnerships, so that our college courses meet the industry standards here in Memphis. There are wonderful industries here, but if we aren't preparing our students as well as we can so that they meet the standards that the folks that Beverly deals with every day, the companies and the corporations, that their needs, they have to see LeMoyne as a critical player in recruiting our students for jobs. And once our students see that if you go to LeMoyne, you have a pathway to a job at some of these corporations, whether it's International Paper, AutoZone, or FedEx, or wherever it is, even some of the small private companies here, that they will have a better chance. So I think it's helping them to see. Beverly talks a lot about what is a value proposition. She came to talk to our faculty about the value proposition. And I think that's what we have to make sure that we demonstrate to students that if they come to us, we will create a pathway for them for employment and opportunity going forward.
Thank you. Thank you. I have another question I want to pull out before we go to our next video from the chat. It's from Marty Tippins Murphy, who asks, what do you think is the most important secondary school investment to best prepare students for college and to address systemic inequity? So the most important secondary school investment to prepare students from college. And I hate to keep going back to you, Dr. Johnson Dean, but that sounds like a question for you, especially with your background in K-12 education.
Well, and coming from Marty Tippins Murphy, I feel like that's a very powerful question that she's asking. I will say that obviously we want all of our students to have the basic literacy skills and mathematical skills to navigate the world in which they're going to inherit. The standards are higher, and students have to be able to read and write and compute. Secondly, you have to get along with people. And I think Beverly talked about this. You have to be adaptive, and the world is changing. Every job is going to change. Wherever you worked before, you know, from the journalistic point of view, the jobs have changed, and you have to be flexible and adaptable. I think we've learned also through this whole process of the racial injustice things that have been going on, that unless students are exposed to the issues of listening to different opinions, the work that Facing History has done around this community to help students navigate learning how to accept others who are different, to hear different points of view, but also to really be a welcoming community. And I think Memphis has gone a long way to create the kind of welcoming environment, in part because Facing History teaches our middle and high school students about the history of this country, about Reconstruction, about the Holocaust, about the Civil Rights Movement. I think that when students really understand their history, and the history particularly in Memphis, the work that the Civil Rights Museum is doing, once people understand those kinds of things, they're going to be better able to work in any diverse company and in any diverse environment, no matter where they are. But particularly, this is going to be important in Memphis.
Right, right. Well, I appreciate that. We're going to go to our next video. When we're going to close with, this is our last video segment, and we're going to hear from some Black college graduates about what they see as the challenges to getting a job in Memphis? This has come up in the chat frequently. Degrees is one thing, but then what about getting a job in Memphis?
I feel as though Memphis leaders, community leaders, and employers in the city can form mentorship programs that will allow college graduates to come and form a connection with somebody in their field of choice and just get them out there to search for a job.
Trying to find a job has been a kind of difficult process. I have gotten my foot in the door, but I haven't furthered myself as much as I thought I would. Some of the things that make that so hard, I would say, has been the experience that is needed for the jobs. Most jobs require you to have certain criteria to be fit for that job.
And another thing that I think would help is really talking to community leaders, people that are hiring in the community, and asking them to truly invest in bias training, because I feel like that is definitely, like, once again, the systemic racism, that's definitely where a lot of the problems stem from. So if we can get people to truly invest in that and to get out of that mindset and to notice their inherent biases, I think that will help.
We should aim to change these ideas from within and with tangible solutions, such as better and more sophisticated extracurricular programs that truly aim to celebrate Memphis talent and guide them to their calling. In addition, we should find means for financial assistance for students throughout college, because we cannot neglect the fact that Memphis is the second most violent city in the United States and has a child poverty rate 3 times that of the national average. So Memphis students need to know that local community and business leaders have a real stake in their success. So if they fail, we all fail. Thank you.
Wow, that's powerful. I really was struck by this concept of a shared destiny, and the idea that Memphis can't be a great city if it's going to ignore a large part of its population, and moreover, we don't want to be a city that ignores a large part of our population. Dr. Johnson Dean, reflections on what the student said just then.
Well, I did think about what is it that students need. So a lot of our students don't have natural networks for job opportunities. And the networks are really important to introduce you to skills or programs. And so I think what we try to do and what we need to do increasingly is to encourage the corporate community to participate with us in giving our students exposure and opportunities outside of the college campus. We have a wonderful partnership with St. Jude's, for example, where our students learn to participate in a call center. They learn all about St. Jude's, and they learn that there are other careers, that exist in this community. We also have a partnership with FedEx, where once a month women corporate leaders meet with some of our young women students on campus to tell them about job opportunities and give them experience. And it's those kinds of experiences with Tech 901, where our students are not just getting an academic education, but they're learning technical skills that actually help them present themselves well. I will say this, that there are a set of really fundamental skills in terms of just interviewing, to wear, resume writing, how to answer questions in a way that makes somebody want to hire you, makes somebody want to promote you. And so those are the kinds of wraparound skills that I'm talking about. They're not all social skills. Some are about job and opportunity skills. I think Beverly alluded to the fact that a lot of our students are very entrepreneurial. They're very interested in new and innovative ways to show their skills and opportunities. The other group of students that I think that we are trying to reach out to include adults. So in the adult community here in Memphis, there are people who are older. They're not in the 18 to 24-year-old group, but they didn't go to college right after high school, but now they find themselves in a job and opportunity that they need to succeed. They need an education. And so through our adult program, which we call Accelerated Studies for Working Adult Professionals, they can go to college at night. they can work online, they can take weekend courses, because in our zest and our efforts to really get more folks with a college education, or even with skills and certificates, if not necessarily a 4-year degree, we have to have more flexibility, we have to have more opportunities that are outside of the traditional way in which we think about college going forward.
Right. I think that's really important. What Dr. Johnson-Dean just said about networks, Beverly, talk to me about what you're hearing from the corporate community in terms of their willingness to get involved with increasing the number of Black college grads, because, you know, we can have all the Black college grads we want. They are college graduates who happen to be Black, or they graduated from a Black institution. But if corporations in Memphis aren't interested in hiring them, or there are going to be barriers, talk to me about what you're hearing from the business community.
Very recently, I had the opportunity to learn about 2 major programs that are being implemented by a couple of major corporations here. One is called Starting Line, which is a program where Nike works with Shelby County schools to explore transportation and logistics opportunities, and much of that is going to be technical very soon. So they're working with 4 schools in the system, 4 or 5 schools in the system. And I know Central High is one of those. I think Cordova is another one of those, and a couple of more that are inner city schools, to help them to understand what some of their career options might be. The second company that I know of has a very unique program, and I'd love to be able to connect Dr. Johnson for LOC with this particular corporation, because it's really unique. FedEx last year launched something called an HBCU satellite program, whereby FedEx has an on-campus satellite location at Mississippi Valley State University. Students are employed and trained by FedEx to do processing of packages and customs clearance work right there. So they have a manager of that office that is hired down there. They have about 30 students from the college that are in that program, working, getting paid, and securing benefits, hospitalization and other benefits that are offered by the college. And then they're offered free tuition, and they have the first stab at a job, a full-time job with the corporation. So it's from college, from the HBCU to the training, and then into the organization. So it really gets them ready, because it creates its own, the company's creating a pipeline. And Dr. Johnson, I want you to know that I did ask them about LeMoyne-Owen being able to participate. So maybe we can have a conversation about that.
Thank you. I will add, Wendy, if I could just, don't underestimate the catalytic value of the Community Foundation's gift, because what I will say is, since the gift came from the foundation, we have got numerous calls from other companies about partnering with us, Nova, Olympic, the city and state government, international paper. So some of what the money does is it signals to the rest of the community the importance of everybody making an investment, as Beverly just referenced.
Yeah, I made a note to myself, send Dr. Johnson-Dean an email about interns with MLK 50, Justice Through Journalism. So yes, this is how these networks form and operate. Bob, I had a question for you. Some of the students mentioned systemic racism and bias training and issues like that related to getting into workplaces. I just want to know your thoughts on that, not just as a foundation executive, but as a white man, hearing Black students say these things.
Yeah, those were really hard to hear. I mean, I think that we like to point at our history and show the progress that we've made over the last 2 or 3 or 4 decades. But hearing those things, it's clear we have still so much work to do. Our work is, and the numbers show that. I mean, the numbers show the huge disparity in achievement and opportunity for based on the color of your skin and what zip code you live in. We're not where we need to be. So that's a challenge to us. And by the way, picking up on Dr. Johnson-Dean's comment and on kind of on the discussion last time about time frame, this was intentionally a long-term investment from the Community Foundation. We know that, we made a couple significant gifts. The largest grants that we'd ever made is from the Community Foundation to LeMoyne-Owen about 10 or 12 years ago, when it was really struggling. And that helped those couple students that were there then. But this gift of $40 million, which is going to kick off about $2 million a year, every year, forever, is a permanent investment in the students that are coming through LeMoyne-Owen, because they're never going to stop. They're hopefully, as keep talking about, really would love to see growing enrollment at LeMoyne-Owen. We'd like to see more and more students coming out of LeMoyne-Owen. That's hopefully what this investment is trying to do, so that we can maybe turn the corner on some of those, frankly, horrific comments that those students are dealing with every day.
Right.
And Wendy, I guess if I could just add, I think that when you think about the persistent problems that impact our community, that and create the larger levels of disparities that continue, we need leaders who are very knowledgeable about the family circumstances, who come out of college ready to come back to our community and invest in making the changes, so these persistent challenges don't just continue year and decade after decade.
Right, right, definitely. So Beverly, to the point of issues of brain drain, which was kind of what I think what you were getting at, Dr. Johnson D. I have a lot of, I'm from Memphis, graduated from White Station High, and I have a lot of high school classmates who left and never came back. Did not feel like there were opportunities here from them. And so as we're on the shared mission to increase the number of college graduates here in Memphis, how do we make sure that they stay?
I think there are a couple of things that would be really, really important. First of all, I think building loyalty and building sort of devotion to any community depends on what happens to that child while they are in that community. I think that we need to communicate a different narrative to our children about the value of education and how important education is and how that can open doors. So we don't need to begin communicating it when they get to high school. It's almost like the campaigns that you guys have all seen about just say no to smoking, or a mind is a serious thing to waste. We've got to begin to permeate and have this messaging to penetrate these young people from the time that they are very young all the way up. And then they will understand what they can do and what they have the power to do with an education. And they'll see themselves within the confines of the city in which we live, making tremendous contributions to it. And they've also got to see some of us being a mayor of a city, some of us being a CEO of a company, some of us being a president of a major college, some of us being a major engineer or a major a STEM area or in technology. I think those are the things that encourage our young people to stay, because it communicates what we can't say. It's actions that speak louder than the words.
Right. So we're kind of coming to an end for this. So I want to just give you each a chance to make some closing thoughts. And I want us to own our own agency and power in this moment, and as we imagine a brighter future. And so for each of you, I have the same question. What does success look like? When we think of increasing the number of Black college graduates in Memphis, how do we know when we're there? What does success look like? Beverly, we'll start with you.
Success for me, first of all, looks like a stable and growing LeMoyne-Owen College. It looks like multiple investments, not just from the Community Foundation, but as Dr. Johnson said, from other entities, organizations, corporations, internships. I see the college growing to have a campus that encompasses not just the space that it's on right now, but the whole block. I mean, as far as you can see, buildings, and there are buildings about maybe technology and artificial intelligence and, cybersecurity. And I see 3,000 students attending that college and relationships being formed so that those students know that when they graduate, they got a good job right here in Memphis, Tennessee. That's part of my vision for LeMoyne-Owen College.
All right, Bob, briefly, what does success look like?
Yeah, I support everything she just said. I think it was an intentional gift to support LeMoyne-Owen because LeMoyne-Owen is different from other choices. But I think we're looking at changing the numbers that we started this presentation with, the numbers of college attainment and employment. We need to encourage Black students to go to college, and at LeMoyne-Owen that would be great. But the U of M and CBU and other places that would be great too. And then we want to see more of our citizens, particularly our Black citizens with college degrees. We need to make sure we pull them through college, so those wraparound services that we talked about, so that they actually get to their degrees. And then something we talked about is we need to make sure that they graduate to good jobs. So we need to make sure that we're providing great jobs here, so that again, back to measurable numbers, we see our Black neighbors achieving throughout businesses, through particularly senior management, where there's a huge gap right now in senior management, pretty much up and down the line. So that's what we need. And then the payoff ultimately, in terms of what the vision is truly that more equitable community. We do not have a level playing field. As quickly and as firmly as we can level that playing field, it will be better for all of us, and it will float all of those boats.
Dr. Johnson-Dean?
Well, I think you've heard from the two experts here that I hold in high regard. I will say I do see a very thriving LeMoyne-Owen College, and I do see it encompassing all aspects of Memphis, but in particular in South Memphis, transforming that community, not just as a technology hub, but creating all of the arts community coming together with Soulsville and Stax, and creating the opportunities so students in that neighborhood, but students across the city want to come there, not just to visit, but to live, not just to go to college, but to run a business, to create different housing patterns, and making sure that people see in our students the talent, the creativity, and the opportunity to grow and thrive in this city. I believe that we can create that. I believe we have all the capacity to do that. And we have to get people to be intentional, to have goodwill, but to see our students as the bright, intelligent, and shining magicians that they truly are. I also see us, as I think Bob said, partnering with other institutions here in this community, so that even as our students graduate with undergraduate degrees, they see themselves getting masters and doctorates, and they see pathways in corporations to continue to grow and thrive long past just getting an undergraduate degree. We have lots of work to do, but what we do here will make the difference in the future for Memphis as a city, and our state, and nationally as well.
Thank you all so much for your remarks. And we're back. We want to take this time to go through the Q&A box and try to pull up as many questions as we can. We also got some questions that were sent to us by email by people who registered, and we want to try to tackle some of those as well. Bob, I will start with you. I'm going to try to word this maybe a little more diplomatically than it came in. But the question was about how to do this kind of work in terms of building racial equity around college graduates in a city like Memphis that has not had the greatest track record. I mean, the fact that we're even having this conversation is testament to the fact that there are some systemic inequities that exist that need to be addressed. So how do we do this work in a city where a disproportionate share of the population is poor, and a disproportionate share of the poor are Black? Have this focus on Black people and not alienate white people?
Well, again, we are one community, so that those are important questions. I think, as I said in some of my earlier comments, I think that we've made a lot of progress there because I think that we saw so much of the white community exit public education, for instance, in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And I think that there certainly had been a greater investment and a greater interest in public education, top to bottom, in Shelby County. Maybe not necessarily in terms of the number of students that are going in those places, but there's certainly an interest across the broader community, including the white community, in the upward movement of public education. We know that it helps all of us. But, you know, I got to say, there's only one right side of history, and there are not multiple paths to success for this community. There's only one path that leads us to a city that provides for all of its citizens, regardless of their heritage and their zip code. And that's this. And that path always starts with education. So it behooves every single one of us, white, black, and anything else, to invest in education for all of our citizens, because it will improve all of our lives. It's so, if you want to look at it cynically and say it's enlightened self-interest, fine. But the fact of the matter is, it is in all of our best interests to educate all of our citizens.
Right. One of the questions we had earlier was from Sam O'Brien in the Q&A box, and he asked about the income in the wealth gap. And actually, there's research that shows that even just getting a college degree does not erase the income gap, and it doesn't do much to address the wealth gap. In fact, the U.S. Census Bureau released data that just came out yesterday around the Black-white race gap, and it was striking. For every dollar of wealth the median white household has, for every dollar that the median Black household has, let me correct that, white families have $17. So Black families have $1, white families have $17. And so the hard dollar amount on that was for Black families, it was a little under $10,000 of household wealth. And for white families, it was $171,000. And so job is an income. Wealth is something you can pass down to the next generation. You can't inherit. Typically, you can't inherit jobs. And so put this college graduate discussion in the context of wealth. And Beverly, maybe that's a question for you, because we don't want to pretend that you graduate, you automatically get a job at a pay rate that's comparable to your white colleague, because we know that doesn't happen automatically. It doesn't automatically happen. If you would take yourself off mute, Beverly. If you can unmute yourself, Beverly.
Thank you. Absolutely. Just because you get a college degree doesn't automatically mean that you also are delivered a job or a career. I will tell you that it's really important that we look at what are the various industries that are growing and make sure that our young people are being effectively trained to be able to assume jobs in those growth industries. And I will say this, for the first time in the history really of the chamber is doing some things very differently in the education space. Number one, our business leaders are sitting down at the table with our superintendent of Shelby County Schools, providing research data that says, here are the industries that are growing. Here are the industries that we need to be attracting that are best aligned with the assets of the marketplace. And there are three primary ones: medical device and innovation industry, transportation and logistics innovation and technology. And the third one is food and ag tech. Somebody's got to feed all these people all over the world. And that's why Indigo Ag is here to really talk about how we begin to think about agriculture and the food technology and innovation so that we can actually drive change. And those jobs at Indigo Ag start at $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. So the more we can engage students in fundamentally understanding the growth industries and train them. And not only are we training them, we're sitting with college presidents and we're saying to college presidents, here's a body of data. that you all need to understand. We've done a mass economic survey. We've also done a burning glass survey, and we shared that data with the college presidents and said, now let's align the curricula, because these jobs that we're getting ready to attract, we got to have workers who understand fundamentally how to do a given job. So it's not just about distribution any longer. It really is about innovation, technology, medical device industry, and others that we are appealing to, and they like Memphis because of a number of assets. But that's one of the ways, Wendy, we can assure that up and down the line, from high school to college, even to technical education, that our young people are prepared for higher level jobs with the necessary skills.
Let me ask this, and this draws on a question that's in the Q&A box from Natalie McKinney, who asked, given the recent report about the opportunity and wealth gap between Black and white college graduates, what do you all believe the strategy should be to ensure we do not mislead our Black youth about attaining the degrees and yet not gaining the opportunities as their white counterparts? So I think it's a question about how honest do we want to be? Are we prepared to be about the gaps here? I don't think we should ignore the role of racism. The Memphis Business Journal has done some stories about the number of Black people, for example, in commercial lending. They could count them on hands, right? That's not an accident. That is the result of deliberate choices by people in hiring positions over years to exclude Black people from positions. And so, what do you think? I mean, Beverly, you move in these spaces. Obviously, you're a Black woman, a Black professional, has been in corporate America for a very, very long time, even prior to your years at the Civil Rights Museum. And yet you move in these spaces with the Chairman's Circle and what have you that are more white. So how should we talk to Black youth about, yes, go to school, yes, get this degree, and also here's the systemic racism that is present in our work world?
Yeah, that's a challenge, Wendy. It really is a challenge because that is a reality. I think there are a couple of things that young people can also do. It would be really great if someone identifies the profession that they'd like to go in and knows someone who is in that profession, who can work with them, help to sponsor them. You know, it is still a relationship business out here. And I can't tell you how many times somebody who was president of a bank said, well, so-and-so says he knows you. What do you think about him? And it was, the onus was then on me to say, listen, I've worked with this individual. He's brilliant, savvy, hard worker, head to the grindstone. So I think being able to establish some relationships can help you navigate. Now, it doesn't change the racism. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't change the racism. But what it does is it helps that individual be better capable of navigating what may be the pitfalls and the obstacles, because you get them ready for what you know they're going to have to endure. And I think that's the value of HBCUs too. I mean, HBCUs tend to be honest about what the graduates are going to have to deal with. We don't want them to think that it is a panacea. Just because you've got that degree, they told you to get it, you got it, now what? But I think we have to share with them that the more relationships they can build, the more internships they can have, the more exposure to some of the folks and that kind of environment will be extremely helpful in helping them to navigate a very challenging and difficult environment. You know, sitting down and talking with somebody like you, Wendy, because one thing about you, you're not gonna pull any punches. You're gonna be very truthful about it. That can be invaluable in helping them understand what they are going to have to confront, and better yet, how they need to deal with that. So I think that's one of the ways in which you can truth tell, but at the same time be supportive and help them to navigate a very difficult environment.
I think that a Black woman far smarter than me said, and I'm blanking on her name right now, that Black people cannot be asked to be the doctor and the patient, right? So we cannot be asked to diagnose what is wrong with us, um, uh, be the person suffering, and also come up with the cure for what ails us. And so I do think that there is a role for White Memphis to play, as they have benefited from these exclusive systems that have kept people out. I want to make sure we're acknowledging a lot of the comments that we're getting and pulling out this feedback. There's been a lot of discussion about mentors, the importance of mentors, and I think I'd add to that. You need mentors for different parts of your life, and also you need rainmakers. And often a mentor is not necessarily a rainmaker, so you need someone who can call and get you access to that network, right? So you may need a mentor to help you role play for the interview, but you need a rainmaker who's going to say, "Hey, Wendy's going to be calling you, and I need you to take her call." The access to these relationships and these networks. And so I want to encourage y'all in the comments, if you have solutions, ideas of things that we could be doing to address some of these issues, not just getting students into college and through college, but then also into successful careers. We've talked about jobs, but I also think we should talk about entrepreneurship, right? We're not just preparing students to go work for someone else, but to also be job creators and maybe have more of a role in charting their own destiny. I've seen some comments. I think this was from Marty Tippins Murphy and also Megan Keel about having dedicated college counselors, separate from the guidance counselor you might have in high school, but someone that's focused on applications, financial aid. I see you nodding, Dr. Johnson Dean. Is that something you'd co-sign on?
Yes, absolutely. And I think those are really good comments and ways in which we can help students who don't, as I said, have lots of experiences navigating. But I do want to emphasize that our students really do provide a return on investment to this community. And they would provide that return on investment by really altering their lifetime earnings so that they can be big contributors and leaders in this community. You know, in the United Negro College Fund, we always say, we're not asking for a handout. We're just asking for a hand. And so we're not asking people to just give us something. We want to earn it, but we do need the opportunity to give a hand up to the network of opportunities that exist, particularly with entrepreneurship, because we do need people, venture capitalists and others, to see our ideas as worthy of investments and not just ignore them. I do think also that increasingly people forget that LeMoyne-Owen College is a economic engine in South Memphis. We generate jobs too. We direct spending on things across the community. We're buying food service, we're buying cleaning supplies, we're buying supplies and equipment. We are a company just like everybody else. And so sometimes I think people forget that LeMoyne-Owen College is actually generating a meaningful business within South Memphis, requiring some investments for our students, but we're also driving the economy and driving employment for lots of faculty and staff.
Yeah, that's an important way to think about this work at all. Think about this work that we're doing at all. I want to continue to look at some of these comments that we're getting in. Douglas Scarborough suggests community tracking of the hiring rate and the amount of Black employees. And I believe this is probably at individual companies. Dr. Martin Luther King, for whom my publication is named, had a quote where he talked about proportional representation in companies. So he said, if a city is 30% Black, you should expect the employees at businesses in that city at a company to be 30% Black. And at all levels of the company, not just at menial areas. And I think perhaps in Memphis, where there are companies that have a high percentage of Black employees, they may have been in more manual labor areas, jobs with lower wages. And so maybe tracking businesses tracking how they're hiring, their hiring practices. Often when I've talked to white people and they've asked me, okay, so what can I do to help? I say, well, if you're in a hiring position, how many of the last of your last 10 hires were Black? How many of your mentees are Black? And if the answer is few or none, then you have work to do. There's something that you can take responsibility for. Um, any other solutions, Beverly, Dr. Johnson Dean, Bob, that you want to surface here for us as we wrap up?
Look, I'll jump in with one thing I've been wanting to say a couple times in here, and that is hiring practices and promotional practices of the companies that our students end up in. And a lot of times in purchasing and other kinds of things, we look at minority-owned businesses and other businesses, and we were trying to make sure that minority-owned businesses get their fair share. One thing that I don't think we're doing enough is holding the other businesses accountable for their practices in hiring and promoting. It's kind of like if they're not a minority business, okay, then that's all I need to know about them. But I do think I thought this when I was in banking and finance in my prior life, that agencies, organizations that were minority owned were scrutinized, but if you weren't minority owned, you're just sort of set on a shelf and you almost get a pass. And I think that's been one of our issues. I think that top to bottom, and we've said this several times here today, not just hiring, but also promotional practices so that the opportunities go up. And I think that's another reason why our Black college graduates aren't earning what our white college graduates are, because they don't have the same access to promotions and advancement, even with other companies once they get in those companies. So I think we need to find new ways to hold all of our employers accountable for their practices, particularly when we're doing business with them.
Right. I see here Jeffrey Higgs, because the name is probably familiar to a lot of us, points out that a 2011 study says that LeMoyne-Owen College's economic impact is $32 million a year. So that's nothing to sneeze at. And that's from a 2011 report. So I'm sure it's even more now. Beverly, Dr. Johnson Dean, any closing remarks?
One of the things I just want to say to all of the LeMoyne-Owen graduates on the call, and I'm sure there are many, I would implore you to support with your finances and your resources LeMoyne-Owen College, because we don't do a good job, and I say this genuinely, in supporting our assets. We may not have a lot of money, but if a whole lot of us give a little bit of money, it becomes a lot of money. So I need for us to change the way we think about supporting institutions like LeMoyne-Owen College. I certainly support LeMoyne-Owen College, and I would invite you all, and I know many of you do, some of you may not have thought about it, but think about that, because it is a tremendous asset and it has a bright future to the extent that we all can get together and galvanize support for it.
Great.
So I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because I do think that in the city that has a large population of African-American families and students, this should be a top priority. And when you look at the data that you showed, Wendy, to begin with, the disparities are so stark, it's hard to believe that we're making a dent. But we do know that our historically Black college, the only one here in Memphis, LeMoyne-Owen College, every day tries to make a dent in the work that we do. But we do need partners, we do need investors, and we do need support to make sure that we continue to thrive. We also need your students. And so if you're out there and you have a neighbor next door with a child in high school, we invite you to go to loc.edu and explore LeMoyne-Owen College. If you are a partner who would like to partner with us, we have a career partnership initiative where we try to connect our students to internship opportunities. We invite you to go to our career partnership website, cpi@loc.edu. That's Career Partnership Initiative, CPI, at loc.edu. We want more students on our campus. We believe that we can change and improve opportunity and outcomes, particularly here in Memphis and the Mid-South. And we invite you to join us on this journey.
Wonderful. So we've gotten lots of ideas for solutions and resources that have come up in the Q&A box, and we will be sharing those with registered attendees later. So on behalf of the Community Foundation and MLK 50, we want to thank you all for taking part in this discussion. And more than even the conversation we've had, we hope that we've sparked some action. We need you to mentor Black students, hire Black students, invest in Black students, promote Black workers. The inequalities here are clear, and change is only possible if we all take the steps to make it. So thank you all for joining us, and good night.
Thank you all.